Machunu's testimony? An illusion he denied encrypted chats, but leaks show signal pings to Magotsi, handle cat. He claimed clean SAPs, ignoring Mkwanazi's dossier, 50 officers on payrolls. First accusation? Google begs to differ. IOL headlines from 2021. Machunu probed over tenders. Machunu's style was his secret weapon, inclusive, not intimidating. He mentored young ANC cadres, many now MPs, over pots of umkomboti, traditional beer. But shadows loomed, ANC infighting, where loyalty tests turned deadly. Machunu stayed neutral-ish, backing the reformist wing against Jacob Zuma's populists. Critics, including the DA, accused him of favoritism in tenders, echoes of KZN's old ghosts. Yet, by 2024, when Ramaphosa reshuffled him to police minister, Machunu left a mixed legacy. 85% of households with piped water, up from 78%, but inequality stark. Townships still queued with buckets while suburbs hosed lawns. His tenure showed a man unafraid of mud, literal and figurative, but one whose decisions often danced on the edge of controversy. Routine Pretoria briefing turns apocalypse. Mkwanazi, flanked by evidence bundles, unleashes. Machunu and Deputy Shadrach Sibia collude with cartels, obstructing 121 probes. The justice system is compromised, he thunders, fingering encrypted signal chats, bribes to Sibia, and Machunu's alleged hand in NPKTT's demise to protect Matlala's R360 Minori SAPS tender. Ramaphosa, stunned, suspends Machunu July 13th. Special leave, pending probe. Grave allegations demand action, the president says. Unsolved. Syndicates infiltrate SAPI's high echelons. Matlala's company, eyed for irregularities, wins fat contracts. Molefe's Machunu link ties to hit squads. Public outrage boils. Cleanup SAPs trends. Cartoons depict Machunu in handcuffs. Machunu greenlights disbanding the National Political Killings Task Team, NPKTT. Formed in 2018 as an interim squad, it probed 300-plus hits, nabbing taxi bosses and hitmen. A 2019 audit flagged it as temporary, recommending merger into the murder and robbery unit to cut duplication. Machunu sees it as admin housekeeping, briefs Ramaphosa, gets nod. But timing stinks. Days earlier, on Deck 6, NPKTT raids Katiso, KT, Molefe, and Vusamuzi, Kat Matlala, cartel kingpins with ANC ties. Molefe, arrested for engineer Armand Swart's murder, blurts, "I'm Machunu's friend." Matlala, facing attempted murder raps, allegedly funneled 150L to 200,000 Rand for Machunu's campaign flights to ANC, January 8th bash, quid pro quo for tender protection. Enter Brown Magotsi, a Northwest businessman and self-styled intel operative. Texts show him relaying Machunu's messages to Matlala. He knew of the disbandment pre-letter. Mkwanazi fumes. Was this a shield for syndicate pals? Machunu denies. Magotsi's just a comrade, never asked favors.
Very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time. So, Police Minister's testimony, as we've also heard from Kenny there, was largely laying the foundation of what would be his evidence at large, somewhat distancing himself from operations of SAPS. Based on what we heard today, what do you make of Mchunu's first day, firstly, and the emphasis that the PKTT was never a formalized unit, but a time-bound project?
Good afternoon. Today's testimony, I think they went for the selective disclosure approach with a bit of narrative management, where because they're using bureaucratic justification by citing your 2019 feasibility study, right, to frame legitimate administrative decision. So I think that is the approach, is trying to lay a ground for South Africans to understand that there was a 2019 work study which was thoroughly done, which was commissioned and therefore suggested certain issues in the PKTT. That is why I'm saying he's using what we call a selective disclosure approach. And today, from his testimony, as he talks about your a commissioned study or work study or feasibility study, he's very careful, unlike before. Remember, in the previous testimony, he was openly or boldly mentioning the so-called Professor De Haas. Now he's taking us to another general or another figure in the SAPS that handled that particular feasibility study. In the ad hoc committee, he said, no, I was advised by findings from feasibility study conducted by Professor De Haas. So he's very careful. So I found him very cagey, very strategic, and through the selective disclosure approach to justify decisions. And he's also now dragging Masemola into the whole equation to justify that, no, from Masemola's understanding, this was just a project that could be dealt with at any time. Hence, his decisions may be around the disbandment. So he's trying to justify administrative decision with it and include bit of consultation here and there, because he understands now that other witnesses testified to indicate that there was never consultation. But the ground he laid today suggests that there were meetings, and you wonder which meetings in particular focus on the PKTT. That is why I'm saying he's very selective and strategic to drive a particular narrative to justify a decision that he by now knows many witnesses, even your legal experts, have identified it as overstepping. By the time we arrive at overstepping question, he would have laid this ground that no, administratively, it was justified because of the 2019 work study. But the findings of the work study or feasibility study has not been extensively shared. That would then talk to the decision, that would then talk to finances or many other issues that were raised or faced within the PKTT. That would have justified the disbandment. However, he's coming in with an understanding that the immediate disbandment does not exist, but a disbandment will only exist and be justifiable when there's a scientific study approved and in consultation with the National Commissioner, of which is a disparity. I find it to be shaky here and there.
I think I agree with you, especially when you're talking about the strategic, point of his testimony, because if you look at some of those allegations, were basically saying that he was interfering. And, he was also had criminal motivation. So I think it was very important for him then to lay that ground and that foundation. But you mentioned, National Commissioner Masemola. Was Mkhunu directly contradicting the National Commissioner's parliamentary statements about, these specialized units already being established? How significant is this inconsistency for understanding just the internal tensions within SAPS itself?
Remember, he has to have come with a strategy to counter-argue. And I think he leaned towards what Masemola has identified, or how these task teams were explained and the mandates and so forth. So he's just coming in to contradict or to counter-argue. Unfortunately, he chose an angle that I don't think going forward is going to explain in greater detail, because it was very clear from all the other witnesses, particularly the National Commissioner, who then heard of the disbandment while on leave. Then now, if you honestly spoke to or consulted or had a meeting, which is something that we've never had because there has not been evidence of the meetings or discussions, what this committee could do when it now faced with questionable evidence, it should be substantiated by facts. Because if there was a meeting or discussions with Masemola, how were they recorded? Wherein the tax team is classified in a manner in which he's presenting it today, that it was just a temporary project, which can, because with that suggests there shouldn't be much attention to it. It can be disbanded at any time. Where are the records that suggest that? But otherwise, going forward, I'm more interested in how he's going to counter-argue the relations with controversial figures that he boldly stated that he has none. And now we know that the commission is in possession of the phone call records where him as the minister was calling Brown Mohosi, whom he claimed to have no relations with during the committee, in the ad hoc committee. So we are highly interested in hearing how he's going to counter-argue that, looking in his credibility as a witness, because now this commission established that there was also a meeting. Even the ad hoc committee established that there was a meeting organized by chief of staff outside the minister's office, but yet the minister under oath explained a different narrative, that he never met Brown Mohosi. So I'm largely interested in also the CFO's narrative, because she came boldly to identify and provided evidence on how she was never consulted. But in the ad hoc committee, the minister specified how he utilizes financial reports advised by CFO. So there are many inconsistencies, but we take note of the narrative foundation he laid today. And I think the commission, like any other questionable witness, they are going to take him to task. I'm sure they've already verified facts here and there and is going to account.